A very beautiful community. Let's look at Keir Starmer's meeting with Donald Trump. Just very briefly, it's not even going to be a proper chat, it's going to be a quarter chat. And leave all the details out because I just want to focus on what it means for Western leaders to negotiate and share space with Trump. Now, there is a certain kind of position that at the kitchen table sort of invites itself, and that says, look, if the new American regime is going to talk to us in terms of buying stuff, conquering stuff, threatening people or extorting people, why can't we just tell it to screw itself? Because it's on a long road to nowhere, this kind of politics. We shouldn't participate in it. Well, the problem with that is that it's a good idea if you have a viable political vehicle for an alternative that requires a possibility for collective action in Europe that isn't there, and a possibility for a kind of efficacy that would require domestically Western democracies to be in a very strong place. So unfortunately, the answer to that is that the kind of world in which it would make sense for European leaders to tell Trump to go screw himself and do so efficaciously is the kind of world in which Trump wouldn't be elected anyway, unfortunately. Now, one of the things that Keir Starmer's team did very well is present an invitation of a formal state visit to this country by Donald Trump in the form of a letter which Trump looked at. I was a bit nervous because it didn't seem clear that he could read it on the spot, so he gave it to Keir Starmer to read. And I thought that was a really excellent move because however transparently manipulative that move is, it actually works for Trump. Don't forget, you have to have an understanding, and this is where, for goodness sake, if I stop having fewer health crises, I'll get the main channel video out on Trump's narcissism. I've roughly sort of scripted what ideas I want to put into it. But basically, Trump doesn't want to dominate you like Putin does. To Putin, you're a real person, separate from him. If you're negotiating with Putin, Putin wants to eat you up. While Trump wants to use you as a way of self-regulating his narcissism. He wants to use you for grandiosity. That's to say, he wants to dominate not the real you, but the you, the idealized you that he puts inside himself and makes various use of to sustain his narcissistic supply. And that means, of course, that he is extremely liable to being manipulated. Unfortunately, the kind of person who is perfectly placed to manipulate Trump is Putin, because Putin has an extremely high degree of sociopathy, possibly a low degree of psychopathy, but trending in that direction. And these are people who absolutely recognize a separateness of themselves from others and of others from themselves, and then take strategic action to gain an advantage in the real world. Whereas the advantage that Trump wants to gain over you isn't an advantage in the real world, it's an advantage in his head, because to a degree you aren't real to Trump, he isn't real to himself. And so Putin uses you to change the world, whereas Trump uses you for narcissistic self-regulation. There are plenty of possibilities to exploit that. And so even a straightforward move like that by Keir Starmer to present this letter about a state visit actually was very, very effective. And then what I think was very well prepped, even though Starmer doesn't have the charisma of Macron, and Starmer was, fidgety and charismatic in many ways, but he was very clear and very well prepped and very nicely balanced in how he responded to Trump. And what they decided to do is let go almost anything Trump might say, no matter how false it could be or unfair, unless it was specifically tied to things that they couldn't concede on this particular public occasion and needed to correct. And a couple of occasions like that occurred with Starmer, and one occasion occurred like that with Macron. So that balance was really good, where you are unruffled by 90% of the abusive sort of fluff that Trump generates, even if it's directed at you. So you've got to be very, very strategic about how you react to this, because you're effectively, managing somebody with a significant personality challenge. And I thought they did that very well. But you see, this kind of conversation we're having is a very important conversation to have. It's about the efficacy of diplomacy with Trump and how it can work, but how it has to be different to anything like the kind of diplomacy you would use with other world leaders. Enough. I'm going to be back possibly late tonight, because you have made me watch the Glenn Greenwald Dugan interview. And unfortunately, I have some things to say about that. So see you soon. Lots of love.